Islam, 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 or Shamerica. I want to rise and give praises to the great God Allah and honors to his holy prophet, honors to our holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, El Hajj Sharif Abdul Ali, that is. We give honors to our Moorish kin once again, here, there, and everywhere, and therefore honors to all of you who are continuously honoring yourselves by being yourselves. We give honors to our Grand National Seal, Grand National Emblem, National Flag, Divine Constitution and Bylaws, and honors to all of you who are a living manifestation and personification of everything that our holy prophet brought to make us a nation. Islam Moors. I just have a brief measure to bring forth. Well, it ain't gonna be real brief, but it'll be briefer than normal. We're gonna try to go through this demonstration as quick as possible. But this is special measure, Moorish kin, is pertaining to the headdress known as the fez. And you have many people don't have a full understanding as to where the fez derived, where it came from, where it originated from, and also its ancient origins and so forth and so on. And you have basically things that have not been clear to the multitudes. And so we want to set some measures out here and make it plain, so that you know exactly where the fez originated from, what it represented, why the Moors demonstrate with the fez, and why it is also necessary that we distinguish the fez as brought to us by our holy prophet from that is demonstrated by others. This is not a measure to be took as an attack on any particular people or organization and so forth and so on, but it is basically giving you insight, into the true origins again and why we wear our fez. So hopefully this will be a grand measure that will bring our people some clarity, in the future when it comes to dealing with this special measure pertaining to the fez. And Islam, Brother Mustafa Shaheed El, gratitude, grand man. This is always a good time to put a measure on the manifest as the mind is a little more still at this time. So yeah, we got the measure that we setting out, and it's entitled The Ancient Origins of the Fez, the Plain Truth. And the fez is one of the most controversial measures that's been put out here on the manifest in this new era and time, especially when you're dealing with the Moors. So we're going to let our Moorish kin know why our fez belong to us and why we don't demonstrate, our fez to the degree to where we are acting as we are imposters or trying to be someone else. So let me start off here. This is a grand measure right here, little document I came across, dealing with some ancient relics, so to speak. We can go into it. I'm really dealing with the pictorial portions of this demonstration. I ain't going through all the reading and all of that, but we gonna point it out. Now, as you can see, these particular engravings here upon this ancient pottery, it's actually from Assur, which is actually the region known today, as basically the same area where you would know the Mesopotamians to be and so forth and so on. Sumerians, all of them pretty much related to each other, coming from the lineage of Cush. So we just say the Cushites, of this special region. If you notice here on this pottery, you see that one actually has a fez on here where my cursor is. This is an ancient measure. So this would basically date back to the Cushites. This is one expression of it in this document. Here's another pretty much fez being demonstrated here as well. This is carved in stone. I want to start with what's carved in stone, before I go into anything. And that is actually dealing with Tiglath uh, Pileser. And that's from 1114 to 1076 BC. Way before any organization or anything ever came on the manifest. And as we pointed out here, you can obviously see that that's a fez, right? So let me see here. I'm gonna go a little further. Here's another depiction. Same type of headdress. This was also found in Assur. And you would also find turban-like headdresses here too. This is another one here. Another fez here. It's the ancient drawings, right? And look at this. This is like, 1045 BC now. Most people trace a fez back. You can't really see these, so I won't really go into them too much. But most people, when they trace the fez back, they only go back to the 1800s. And they think about the Shriners. And here's a white one right here. And you know who got it on. Them our people right there. Yes, sir. He got the plain white fez on, right? And this was found at Kassite Kurigogzu. So that's another, but it don't get no plainer than that. I ain't even really got to go no further after that. It's another expression. They had many different expressions of their fez, and they would often also tie things around them. This is another expression of the fez here. You see the different shapes and forms of the fez. I want to show you all of this. This is a type of fez here, but it has, different designs in it and so forth and so on. This is from Assyrian Babylonia. Okay. You got other head, pretty much every headdress you can think of today that the Muslim demonstrate with, you can mostly find up here in this area. See here? This definitely looked exactly like the fez as well. Just as all the others. And that's also from the Assyrians as well. I'm just trying to find the stuff that's really making it plain. And I'm laying this base here so when I go into everything that I demonstrate, this is also a type of fez as well. If you notice, the node at the top here is normally where our tassel would hang from. Mostly they had things, like I said, that they would almost, if you had a fez and you put brocade on it, that's basically how they demonstrated. This is actually the headdress similar to the one that Haile Selassie wear. It's not exactly a fez. It's very similar to the fez. But yeah, that's similar to the... Let's see here. So yeah, pretty much all of these headdresses, yeah, come straight from the ancient Kushites. Straight from the ancient Kushites, Moorish kin. This is just for stars. Again, I mean, you can't deny that being a fez right there. You can't deny it. Neither can you deny, as we showed you above here, this being the Fez right here. Right? And we'll go back right here and where we started at. You see it. So these are some ancient expressions. We already know the Comedian expressions of them, so it wasn't no need to go to Kemet in this particular area here just yet. But we will go into Kemet in a little bit. So when you deal with the Moors, notice the attire that this one has on here. This is how the Moors demonstrated in ancient, well, not ancient, but the medieval times in Spain. You see, this is where you had certain people that were trying to imitate us. You don't see anything wrote on his fez, which was actually known by the term tarbouche. Also, if we go back to, the Persian, people, they call it the sarpus. That's a whole nother measure. Now, these are the different types of fezes that were made popular through the Ottoman Empire. This is the Azizi. This is the Hamidi. This is the Mesidi. And this is the Zuhaf. The Zuhaf fez is the fez that pretty much was adopted by us, but it's very similar to the Hamidi. But the Zuhaf is the fez that was mostly adopted by us. And you'll see why. Because the Zuhaf fez actually came forth from the Zouaves of Algeria. You see? And those of Tunis and so forth and so on. Actually, they were the ones who the Turks actually brought their fezes from. So if you were to go into the actual history and look for the years, you will find that in 1725, Abdul Hamid I's hand, he actually was the first to bring the fez to the Turks. And he used to wrap it. He was one that used to wrap his fez. And we'll go to him in a few seconds. But yeah, these are the different fezes right here that you see demonstrated. And if you go into the Turkish Empire, you'll find out who that is. Now, this is Sultan Mahmud II. 1826 is when they said that he was, a lot of people accredit him to being the one that actually brought the fez forth, but it was actually Abdul Hamid Han, and it actually was demonstrated also by Muhammad Ali Pasha, who went into Egypt. You see, he took it into Egypt, and that's why you had those who came through that lineage, which is going to be very important in a few minutes when we get to talking about, how it got into the shrine. This particular brother here, he wore the fez in a whole bunch of different ways. You notice the garb he have on here. If you've seen the Resurrection Moors, a lot of them like to wear this cape-like garb here. But it also came, through our people. But the Turks pretty much adopted these things from our people. And they just put their own twist on it. You got to remember, we were actually the ones that founded, the original empire, in those areas. Anatolia and all that right there, them was, Moors. Those were seeds of our ancestors. All you got to do is do the research. But also, here's another measure where he actually have a brocade style on it. It can either be a brooch or, maybe a pattern that was stitched into it. But this is one where he actually had a pattern on this demonstration. And it's key that you have a knowledge of this, because this is the individual that many of the Westerners or the Europeans begin to try to imitate in their secret societies. Here you see him, which is actually another expression of the original picture I showed you. And you don't see anything there, it's just a plain fez. Right? That's him again, demonstrating as well. Okay. And I actually put this up here so that the Moors can really see again where they started bringing these demonstrations on the manifest. They actually didn't put Ahmed here with his fez on in that particular area. But yeah, you can see it over here. They was demonstrating these fezes, and if you go through the list, this is when it just became plain fez. You know, these were more modern people around the time of your 1800s right here. When you get all the way back up here, you talking about the 1700s and so forth and so on in the Ottoman Empire. But if you look, you can definitely see them demonstrating the fez, but they made it popular because they made it part and parcel of their governmental and uniformal expression and dress. But they ordered what they had from Tunis. So if they ordered it from, you know, the west coast of Africa, then this lets you know that evidently they was already wearing it in Africa. You see, before the Turks got their hands on it. So that's a key for one to have a knowledge of as well. Now, the fez in Morocco, you know, symbolically represented nationalism, you know, as it was worn by the Moroccans, according to my research, as a symbol of protest against foreign occupation. You know, the French, for example. You know, so this is one of the reasons they wore the fez in Morocco, you know, later on down the line. That's actually, I'll take that out. That's another picture of Abdul Hamid. Notice he actually has a turban wrapped around his fez here, and he got all types of, it's probably a brooch with feathers coming out of it. Definitely feathers, but it's a brooch on the front of it. You know, not writing, but an actual pen, a brooch pen, like the one the Prophet actually, Noble Drew Ali, has on his headdress. He has a sundial brooch on the front of his, similar to the one in the headdress I posted last night. Here it is again, being demonstrated as well. He has it wrapped in the turban again. There. You talking to, you know, around 1725. You know, this is before any Shriners organization or anything came on the manifest. So we showed you how far this has come. This is actually a picture of Ismail Pasha, the one who actually founded the Egyptian Ottoman Empire, you know, that dynasty in Egypt. It was known as Muhammad Ali dynasty, which is also where I have shown our family that we traced the brother Wali Fuad Muhammad Ali back to this special dynasty. That's a whole nother measure. But you're going to see why it's relevant or necessary. This is what they call Royal Egypt. So if you come up here and you look at all these pictures, that's a picture of Muhammad Ali Pasha. You also see a picture of Khedive Ismail Pasha. And it's key that you know this measure as we go where we're getting ready to go. So really, these were all of the royal family, the Egyptian rulers, Abbas the first. Then you had Tawfiq Pasha. These individuals here are individuals that are mentioned when it comes to the origins of the shrine, so to speak. You know, the shrine and those who are part of the Shriners, if you go into their history, they make reference to these particular ones. Some of them may not even know who these individuals are if they haven't done a deep research, but we point them out to you. And they was actually a part of the Masonic, Egyptian Masonic Lodge. These Khedives right here. You see? And that's why you see a lot of things that you see now here in the West, they were really copied from these particular ones. I'll give you a prime example. Do it like this right here. Since I'm speaking on it. This is Tawfiq Pasha, who is actually said to be truly Rafet Pasha, referred to by the John G. Jones Shriners. This particular one right here, coming from that same lineage, you know, he was also part and parcel of that lodge. You see, they was a part of those demonstrations. And this is before, you know, these other organizations came on the manifest in the West. So when William Fleming said that he seen a ritual being performed, he was actually watching this in the court of the Khedive, Ishmael. See, there he is right there. 1852, 1892. That's the Khedive, Ishmael. These are other ones. All these here, these ones straight through the Egyptian lineage. You see? That's Prince Fuad right there. So, these ones in Egypt at this time, they was wearing plain fezzes, right? Even though they was affiliated with them different organizations. Actually, they came up under Napoleon's particular Masonic rite. You know, when he went into Egypt. But notice, the Moors was doing it first before they ever even picked it up. Now, the significance of this right here, I want to show you something, because I just pointed out the Ottoman Empire and the Turks and so forth and so on. You see this symbol of ancient Kemet right here. Now, check this out. This is a bust, a picture of Muhammad Ali Pasha, who I was speaking of earlier. He's here, he got his fez on. He's basking in the sun, but look at the sun. Notice the way the sun is being demonstrated here. These Turks, they was demonstrating a lot of Comedian science up here. You see the sun here? Pay attention to that. The rays coming down with the hands at the end. That's really symbolic to wisdom speaking, you know, from the highest plane, so to speak, or coming from the highest plane of spirit life. The hand is symbolic to the mind, and the sun represents divine light, Ra in ancient Kemet. You see, this symbol is adopted straight out of Kemet. And this is the symbol that's being demonstrated right here. You see? You know about Kemet. You already know this here, but you probably didn't know the Turks was demonstrating like this. And just in case you think I'm reaching and I'm just making something up, because many people think that we just be playing out here, right? I want you to take a look at this. Hold up. this way. Trying to get that demonstration there up. Well, look like I'm gonna have to do it this way. For some reason, it's not letting me expand it. We'll just type it in and then go into the image of it. Well, it was already up, so we'll click into it here. This one, August Khan. Check this out. If you look closely, you see the head of a cow. You see the horns. But if you look at his headdress, you see the sun disk in the center, and then you see the horns here. This one, known as Lord of the Two Horns, just a bonus key for you Moors and those who do serious research. This is the one that's actually known as Dhul Qarnayn in the Grand Quran. Now, his role had been attributed to Alexander the Great falsely. This is the Lord of the Two Horns right here. You see? The one that basically would be on the manifest, during the time of the Gog and the Magog, so to speak. Notice he got a scimitar on it. But why does he have all this comedian regalia on him, and he in Turkey? And I just showed you a few minutes ago, they had the brother Muhammad Ali Pasha, pretty much basking in the comedian sun, and that was really a symbol of Aten, A-T-E-N, sometime A-T-U-N. And if you go into the Arabic and you do a lot of research, like you hear me talking about the Sibagatu La, or the Sibagatun, the root Atun is at the the majority of the words in Arabic have Atun at the root. Aten, dealing with the worship of one supreme being, monotheistic deity, right? So this comedian way of life being drawn is more ancient than what you think Islam is. You see? This is the old time religion. That's a bonus right there. We're going to put that in here since we moving in the area. Now this is the same thing that August Khan has on his headdress here. This sun disk, and this is Hatar, or Het Heru. You see, often also known as Hajar or Hagar. You see, the temple in Mount Sinai was raised to her. You always hear me mention that as well. Where Moses or Moses actually went and got his tablets from. So that headdress that he has on, again, is the same headdress that she has on. Now we know if we said that Hajar is in line with Hatar, Het Heru, then we know that Hajar was actually said to be a Kemite, and she gave birth to Ishmael. And this was from whom most of us know as Abraham, or Abraham, right? Who was a Sumerian, who was a Cushite, right? So it makes sense then, why this special one will be tracing their roots back. But if you go and study the Anatolians, you'll also see a whole lot more as to why that one, is holding up those ancestors, so to speak. Yeah, he got the cow right here, the horn and everything. Remember when Moses, as they say, he went up there with the Israelites and they started worshiping the golden cow. It was in this same region at the temple of Het Heru, the temple of Hathor, Mount Sinai, in that same area where the tablets are laid over and sticking out of the ground right now, today with metal netter wrote all over, right? So, now that you see that, you can see that the Turks are a little more ancient than you thought they were. Now, do all of them in this new era and time acknowledge who they are? It ain't no different than the modern day Moroccan or the modern day Arab. You know, they don't care to really go into that, or they don't know it. Most of them. So, there was also a time dealing with the headdress, that the fez actually was banned. You see, the fez actually was banned. I'm talking about it was, and this was later on around 1925, but it was banned when the Sultanate had been overthrown in Iraq, Egypt, and Libya. And the fez was actually condemned by the new regime, and men were imprisoned if they got caught wearing the fez. This was that around the time when the Prophet brought it back. It couldn't even be wore by most of the people there. It was also a time here in the West that Elmer E. Ellensworth, he started what we call the Zouabe Cadets Drill Team, a drill company, around 1861, 1865. And he was of, I want to say, French, North African birth, but basically, I don't know if he came over here or whatever the case may be, but he influenced the uniforms that were used by the soldiers in the wars over here. And Algeria, they actually were demonstrating this measure way back in 1831. And I got a lot of pictures, that were demonstrated by those who were in Turkey as well. And the example that they was demonstrating in Algeria, which I'll be showing you in a minute. Before we go there, this is also another symbol of the Turks. This is actually the seal of August Khan, the brother I just showed you. Now notice he has the Ankh as his symbol. He Turk, right? We already know that's one of the symbols that the Turk has, with the crescent, with the sphere going through it. And then they are referred to as the Emor, right? And then you see the pyramid over here. So why is Turkey, at least some of them, so obsessed with Kemet? Evidently, they know who they are. But if you go back to the teachings of Prophet Noble Drew Ali, and if you go back to his lessons, he told you, who the Turks were and who they came from. He told you what their lineage was. And everything that I'm saying pretty much is right there in line with that demonstration, for those who are able to receive it. Now some ain't meant to unfold into this demonstration, so it may be a little bit over their head, even though it's plain as plain can be. But our holy prophet knew exactly what he was talking about. He was very accurate in everything that he put out here, but many of our people think that he was playing. He just made up something, and it didn't have a whole lot of meaning to it. Matter of fact, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, he was a plagiarist. This is what people go to saying about our prophet, right? Now, based upon the history that I just gave you, if we go back to the divine origin of the Asiatic nations, and he began to give the history, as you just heard me, 2 nations been mentioned, and these symbols and the fez and so forth have been traced back to. You see, it's been through the Kushite lineage, and also, that of ancient Kemet. You see? It says, remember what I was just showing you about the headdress of August Khan, being a Turk. It say the Turks are the true descendants of Hagar, who are the chief protectors of the Islamic creed of Mecca, beginning from Muhammad the first, the founder of the Uniting of Islam by the command of the great universal God, Allah. So that's the confirmation that the Prophet demonstrated here. Now, all I did is trace the headdress back, and pretty much, it basically confirmed the history of what the Prophet had already taught. You see? Now, the modern day Turk, as I stated, don't care nothing about that history. Now they concept of protecting Mecca ain't got nothing to do with the original the old time religion and religious creed. So check this out. These are some of the soldiers. These are some of the soldiers there. Notice they got the fez on. This is the same uniform that the Zouavi also demonstrated at a particular level. But these are the same demonstrations in this attire that he have on here that was demonstrated by the mercenaries from America who fought in the Egyptian army under the Khedivite. These were the ones that William Fleming, the Shriner, was looking at, not knowing that these was American soldiers dressed up in Orient-like attire. But these are some of the, uniforms that they had on. But notice this. This is also Zouavi dress. This is our people demonstrating this. It's another brother. Same type of uniform. Another brother. Same uniform. It's another brother demonstrating the same uniform here. This is Zouavi. All Moors, right? All Moors. So, and that's actually a group of them together here. That's actually a better photo too as well. So yeah. When you deal with these headdresses, we show you how they are connected to us way more than you will find them connected to anybody else. Now we finna get into showing you a few things in regards to dealing with these different bodies that have begun to adopt our headdress and mark them. And it's a reason why the prophet said don't mark your fez. Now some people also have tried to teach that the tarbush or the fez was a symbol of oppression and the mark of an uncivilized man. You have people of that type of opinion. And it was also stated that the deep maroon colored fez, the darker colored, it is basically that which is for the noble man. And then the softer red, where they get a little brighter, represented the common man. You see, so one basically would represent officials, and then the unrepresented citizens, according to my research, right? So William Fleming adopted his fez for the Shriners in 1870. Now this after the smoke done cleared, after all of that history I just gave you. They come on the scene, and this was after him observing the Khedive Ismail Pasha. This is where he came up with his concept for his uniform for the ancient Arabic Order of the Noble of the Mystic Shrine. And originally they didn't have nothing on it too much either, writing. And then later on they began to write on it. But then you had John G. Jones come in 1893. And he said that Ali Rafel Pasha, which is really Tawfiq Pasha, was the one that allowed him to have his measures. So both of these different organizations are saying that they had their authority from basically Islamic nations in the East. You see, we even had Ahmed Suleiman try to come over here with the Prophet, and he had his feds marked all up, then. But looking at the history here between the ancient Arabic order and the ancient Egyptian Arabic order, the Noble of the Mystic Shrine, we can see they all came long behind the Moors in the medieval times as well as during the ancient times. So for those of you who think that the feds came from the Shriners, you have been sadly mistaken, hoodwinked, bamboozled, run amok, led astray, whatever you want to call it. Now, if you choose to accept that right there after this, then that's on you. We just giving you history. It's not an attack on those particular organizations, but we letting you know the plain truth and the ancient origins about this figure number one called the Fez in the teachings of the Moors. So when the Prophet Noble Drew Ali said Moors be the plain truth, like I your prophet, and it said that the prophet removed marked fez from the head of certain individuals. I heard one was removed from the head of Brother Cook Bay. I was also informed that he actually removed the fez as well from the head of the Prince of Peace. That was marked. In other words, this was a custom where the prophet would see Moors that had writing on their fez, and he would remove the written fez, the marked fez, and basically, after removing it, he would put a Moorish fez upon their head. Plain. You see? So, where did all this marking the fez begin to come from among the Moors and other different groups? We giving you history. We're going to get to that in a minute. We're going to show you. Now, take a good look at this right here. This is a Victorian piece. When I say Victorian, in other words, dealing with the jewelry of Queen Victoria. Now, if you look, you notice that these are actually Bengal claws. They actually go around and make the whole necklace up, right? You got one that's upright. Then you have one that's inverted right here. And this is just simply, two of these claws basically fused by this metal that's in between it, so to speak. And so this is a claw here and a claw there, right? Now, what is the significance of this? I'm finna show you. I want to show you this same thing by itself. Looks similar to something that you're familiar with, don't it? It looked like a crescent. But you can see this claw here as plain as day. Now let me show you this. You're going to learn something today. When you see this symbol, which is known as the jewel of the Shriners, in all actuality, these are really the claws of the Bengal. You see, had nothing to do really with a crescent, but it was, an opportunity to really express a measure, so to speak, and make you feel as if, this was a symbol that represented Islam, the Muslims, and so forth and so on. But all actuality, this represents a symbol of the big game hunters. And who do you think that they was hunting? So what do you think Victoria's Secret really was? Oh, you thought it was just some undies, that they sell in the mall somewhere, for a woman to adorn her body with, so forth and so on, and be fair seeming to the hubby. That's what you thought that was? At least that's what they said, right? So we really find out that, when they begin to talk about this so-called Great White Brotherhood, this represent the big game hunters. And this was Victoria's secret. You remember the brother, stated on Minister Society, if you ever watched the movie, he said the hunt is on and you're the prey. Our brother Curtis Mayfield said the same thing. The hunt is on, and brother, you the prey. Right? So, the big game hunters of the great white brotherhood was hunting you all the while. So when they catch you, by going through these various kingdoms and they conquer these kingdoms, you become subject to them. You subject to them, right? And they actually conquered you basically with your own measure of defense. Now, we demonstrate the scimitar as it represents consciousness. So the scimitar is indigenous to Islam. The scimitar has always been indigenous to Islam. Actually, it's indigenous to ancient Kemet. You see, but that's a whole nother measure, because Tehuti actually passed the scimitar down, basically generation under generation. They came from him, the first one did. And the angel Jibril was the one that gave Prophet Muhammad his scimitar. You see? So if we really go into the science of what the scimitar represented, people say, well, when you see the scimitar above a crescent and a star, which we find out really represent the Bengal Claw and everything, and dealing with the big game hunters, they say, well, this represent, that one can't reveal the secrets, and, they subjugating the queen and the god woman and all that other foolery, right? But it go deeper than that, right? It's basically saying, if the scimitar represent consciousness, if you woke the European up and brought them out of the dark ages by teaching them how to clean themselves up and so forth and so on, right? And then they took that same science and they subjugated you with the science. It's not the sign of the scimitar that has to do with anything that represents your subjugation. Because the scimitar represents consciousness. It's just saying you brought them out of darkness into the light, and when they came into the light, they used the same sciences you used to clean them up and civilize them, and they subjugated you by means of the science. So now the scimitar has a bad rap, when it comes to dealing with the history of one is ignorant of the measure, because they give more credit to the European than the European deserve. And they begin to say, well, the scimitar, above the star, this is a Shriner's demonstration and so forth and so on. Well, where did they get it from? Who had it before them? And why was it necessary also for them to write and mention certain places above their scimitar, crescent, so-called crescent, and star, right? Why was it necessary for them to put, the names of these cities and the names of these countries above this special emblem? So if the big game hunters were hunting, then when they caught their special prey and devoured their prey, just as you see a hunter when he demonstrates, I know all the ones right here, they love to hunt down here. But the ones that love to hunt here, when they go out hunting game, they like to bring their prize buck back and demonstrate taxidermy and put him up on the wall and stuff him and say, I did that. This how the country European like to do down here, right? So it's the same measure. When somebody put Egypt up there, they put Islam up there, which I already talked about this before, but we got to keep using the hammer of repetition until you get it. We just giving you the truth. I can give you the truth. I don't have no worshipful master but Allah. You see? And anybody that know what I'm speaking, they'll say, yeah, that brother giving you the truth. But then those who don't want you to have the truth, they might get a little upset, but they'll be all right too. So again, you see here again the Bengal Claw, right? And you think it's a crescent. It's in the form and the semblance of a crescent, but what do Bengals do with their claws? These are really weapons, to subdue their prey, and then they can bite into them, so to speak, right? Notice on this scimitar, they got Mecca on it. And we know ain't nothing Mecca about Europe. All this is symbolism, signs and symbols for conscious mind. So the gullible are those who are pure in heart. If they begin to see these type of symbols on one, having no knowledge of it, they'll begin to think, oh, that's my brother right there. You see? Because that's the way one being taught. Let me show you something though. This is the one. I want to actually go back to this one first. If you look at this one here with the Bengal claws on it, you notice that I actually have it. Yeah, we'll blow it up a little bigger right there. There you go. Notice it says A-L-L-A and H. Allah. So if this represents Allah, then why would the star be inverted upside down? And why would the head be downward rather than the head being upright? You see, why would you turn Allah upside down? Did that make any sense to a Muslim? In another world, on the street level, if you turned that 5 upside down like that right there, that would be disrespectful. If you would go in the ancient time, disrespectful being blasphemy. You see? Now, this is not to attack particularly everybody, demonstrating in a particular way, because this may be the way this particular body demonstrate here. But we have to be careful as to those things that we call our own. We need to know. See, if love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice upright represent just that, then what you think the inverted star upside down represents? It's the opposite of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. So if the upright star with the head being up top represent Allah, then what do you think is being demonstrated when you turn Allah upside down? If you ever watched any movie in Hollywood, most of the time, anything sacred, when they trying to cast out a demon or something, anything sacred, the demon mock. You'll turn a cross upside down if they look at that as a spiritual symbol. If you say God, he say dog. It's, we can go into many different aspects. They like to speak backwards, basically. So just pay attention to certain things, people. Most people write about this type of stuff. I'm giving you the truth for free. And I don't even care if you thank me or not. Right? So, looking at all these different phases, we done put this up here before. Now that they all marked up, you know what these symbols really represent now. You see Mecca, you see Allah, you see Islam, you see Kaaba, Ali, Muhammad, Medina, Egyptian, Muslim, and Al-Quran, right? You see all of that up here on this headdress. But if you ask the average individual that's of these bodies, well, do you have a knowledge of Mecca? Or you have a knowledge of Allah, Islam? And they'd be like, man, I don't know. But you took an oath on the Quran, though. You see what I'm saying? You got one up in your closet, but then you get on your pulpit Sunday morning and blasphemy against Allah. You see, not all of them, because some people take their little stuff serious and they'll say, "Well, I acknowledge Allah as Allah," but they still tied to, bound by oath, so to speak. So they can't speak certain things. You know, all we trying to show you is that we as Moors don't impersonate organizations. That's all it really boiled down to. It ain't to try to tear down what they got going. That's their demonstration. We telling you why Prophet Noble Drew Ali brought the Moors the plain truth. Now, there are many Moors that are actually affiliated with these organizations. But that's a whole nother measure. We ain't even got to go into that. And do not confuse this with this, because those are two different things. Don't do it. Do not do it. First and foremost, you never see an open star when you're dealing with these special demonstrations here. They're always closed, which means that they have boundaries. And it's the same thing when you write, names on the feds. You basically place a boundary upon that special headdress. Yeah, we know that we demonstrate, as the lords of the plain of soul and plain things made manifest. We are the vicegerents, the caliphs of ancient Kemet, Mecca, and all those different places that you can see wrote on a headdress. But we are not limited to one particular place. We are indigenous to the planet. Matter of fact, we the caretakers of the planet. You see, that's what it means to be a God man. So when you look at this special symbol here, this symbol, which a lot of people will tell you, "Oh, that prophet didn't bring that right there." But if you go back there and look, the prophet got people standing right next to him with the same symbol. Now, this 5-pointed open green star, this was expressed as it is in MAG in the government, but we're talking about scimitar above star. And the prophet spoke about the 5-pointed green star. So this is the 5-pointed green star that is mentioned in the 101s. So for those who got it on their mind and say the prophet didn't bring that, he told you about the 5-pointed open green star. You see, now I don't know where y'all get that red 5-pointed star that's closed from, because the prophet didn't speak about that in his literature. But that's a whole nother measure. So now when you get to dealing with these quadrants right here, right? They really represent justice, mercy, love, and right. You see? That's what they represent. That would be the mother of virtues, right? That would make this symbolic to the soil of soul too, right? So that would be the seed that's planted in the soil of soul. The principles of star. But on a high and elevated level, the divine wisdom having to do with justice taking its course, if you will, 360 degrees, 720 when you deal with it as it is above, so and below, which is still going back to the 9 as well, re-entry. It's also represent cherubim, seraphim, angels, and men. You see? That's a whole nother measure. We putting it out there. It ain't meant for everybody to unfold into the understanding, but you'll get it in due time. Now, some people might be mad that we giving you the truth. But they say, "Brother, these adept degrees where your adept chamber is above your neck." And for those who think that one is just talking, if I don't know, then how I know what I'm demonstrating? Where did I come up with the insight from? If you want to question me. So, nevertheless, yes, this is the symbol that represents us. And we can go into it further, we know that white mean purity, purity mean God, God mean the ruler of the land. We ain't talking about the white man. European, we're talking about the essence of the man, the spirit. You see? But that's a whole nother measure as well. So let me proceed on, but we want to make it plain and clear. Don't get this confused with this. Two different things. That's another bonus we want to add in there. Because actually, when you go into the history and you look at the symbols, these two flags here, if you were to put them together, this represents Morocco, this represents Saudi Arabia. Both of the nations that the prophet himself went to. And he received measures from. The name Ali, he actually received from the Alawite dynasty in Morocco. The Sharif portion is also Moroccan origin, but also the Sharif portion that you hear us demonstrating, which really means noble. That's what Sharif means, noble, for those who don't know no better. You know, this is where you go into Ibn Saud. You see, but if you put those two together, this is what you come up with if you were dealing with the prophet symbolism. You see that banner right there? So when you see the flag that you see Mag flying, you can believe that Mag is on time. I just thought I'd add that in there too as well for those who wanted to know. FYI. So, as I stated earlier, for those who like to give credit to the European and say everything belonged to them, and I always demonstrate this here, the scimitar is indigenous to Islamism. All of these are symbols mostly from Morocco, but different. Here, this is Yemen, this is Morocco, this is one of the Moroccan, I think, I want to say the Marinid. This is Safavid, no, the Persian, Safavid. This is definitely a more demonstration. Here, this scimitar above the star. This is the Saudi, you already know that's Yemen, as we stated. This is the, I want to say the Muwalikite dynasty, I want to say it is. Man, there's so many of them here, but these are all Islamic symbols here. For those who like to demonize the scimitar and the star. The scimitar is indigenous to Islamism. Before there ever was anything called a shrine or shriners, we was demonstrating it. So stop throwing your stuff away, Moorish King, and allowing other people to claim it as theirs. That's what the prophet said. The prophet said the only reason you don't want to accept Islamism because it's yours. And everybody want to get a European credit because they ain't did no research. They ain't studied. See, if you pay attention, everything I'm bringing you, it go back to the root. And that's the difference between me and most that I encounter. They like to deal with what somebody taught them right now and hold on to that. I respect what I get from somebody right now, but I do my own research. You see, I always go to the root. I want to know how far back this went. Who was the first to bring it on the manifest? That's a key to a lot of you who like to research. If you do that right there, you'll always arrive at the truth. And that's one to grow on. So, yeah, you see that right there? Muslim. If you don't accept it, the European will rep it. Now you see all these Europeans up here, and every last one of them got Muslim on their face. And they smiling. You think they doing that because they represent Islamism? No. They smiling because they basking in the success of conquering you. And putting your headdress on talking about, I'm a grand potentate. I'm the grand Rabban, the grand divan. and so forth and so on. And it's crazy. So now, how do you think it's possible for you to represent being the conquered and being the conqueror? This is why Prophet Noble Drew Ali said, pretty much, if you honest, oaths are unnecessary. So a lot of things that the prophet spoke of, you know, he said for a reason. Again, this is not to demonize nobody. We just making it plain. This is one of the new bodies they just established out here in North Carolina. The Ali shrines. Now, I wonder why it was convenient right now to establish that demonstration and promote the name Ali. Oh, and if you look up there, I didn't even see that. You got one standing right there in the center. He got Quran up there. K-O-R-A-N. In North Carolina now. Jacksonville, I want to say. So, y'all better stop letting people play with y'all, man. My thing is, only difference that the only thing that these brothers got that the Moors don't have is camaraderie. And it just looked like that half of the time because they don't get along like you think they all do. Every organization got, different situations, in conflict here and there. Only difference is, they know how to put certain things aside and work for the greater good. But we can't get our Moorish kin to come together for nothing in the world. You see what I'm saying? And so we begin to look at other things outside of the Moorish paradigm and begin to try to promote those things, as if they are the hawk or the sole truth. But as old as these organizations are, and as long as they've been on the manifest, you see, is our nation free yet? Because most of these individuals probably work in some, state office or whatever the case may be. But all of those people being put in these different positions, lawyers, policemen, doctors, and everything else, has any of that helped us right now? Because everybody love to say, well, we need to vote. Everybody want to still try to build within a system, but they don't want to demonstrate self-determination. Well, you ain't got to be voting, against yourself or whatever. Let somebody play with your yo-yo. You see? So, yeah, that's all they got. They got uniformity. Something that the Moors, just have a hard time demonstrating. Even though the prophet said that he founded the Moorish Science Temple for the purpose of being a lawfully chartered organization, and he founded his Moorish Divine National Movement for the purpose, May 1st, 1916, for the purpose of the uniting of the Asiatic states. And when we make this statement right here, quoting the prophet, automatically somebody ignorant go to thinking that somebody trying to attack them. When we just simply letting you know the purpose and the reason the prophet established his divine movement and the reason he established his temple. These are his words. But I'm more focused on coming together under the uniting of the Asiatic states, not coming together under me or following me, or coming together under my leadership, following my leadership, coming together, period. Moors can't do it. And if they paid attention to what one was giving them rather than being on the defense, and stop attacking, they wouldn't feel as if I was attacking them. They would say the brother is putting a measure out here trying to give us clarity. Oh, no, but I look like somebody different, so I'm outside of your paradigm. So it must be an attack. This is the way we've been trained to think, while at the same time siding with the adversary. But that's another measure. So yeah, even all in Hawaii, you had ones putting Islam on their demonstration. And this is actually one of the first members of the Prophet's organization to mark his feds. People get upset when we point this measure out. You know, they get mad. All I'm doing, I'm giving you history. You get mad at me for putting it out here, but get mad at the one that got the feds on his head. You see, I didn't tell him to put it on. The prophet said don't mark your feds. So if you gonna take the prophet law and act like you zealous with it, don't pick and choose as to when you gonna be zealous, because you see me as somebody outside of your body or your paradigm, and you want to look at me like I'm trying to attack. Stand with the prophet, because that's what I do. It ain't got nothing to do with emotion, ain't got nothing to do with, those, who has came the way before I came. I'm just speaking the truth. And that's the difference between me and a lot of different individuals. I'm going to speak the truth, and I don't care who get offended by it. I don't care who don't like me. Y'all know how long I've been hated, family, since I was a young seed. You know how many times I done been betrayed? How many times I done had people cutthroat toward me? People know what I'm talking about that know me. So that's why I learned how to be able to live alone. Because every time I demonstrated loyalty to those who wasn't loyal, it always came back, in a lesson I say that I had to learn, basically. And so going through all that type of demonstration right there, always being hated, and opposed, that's what fortified my mind as it is now. That's why I can stand alone. That's why I can bring the truth as I bring it and don't care who don't like it. Like the prophet say, even if my mama ain't right, she can't get by. And that's a literal statement when it come to me. If you know my mother and you were to talk to her, I love her to death, but she know that I demonstrate just like that. You see? So I don't care about one being mad. I'm going to keep bringing the truth to the people, because my duty as an angel is to make it rain. My duty is not to watch where the raindrops fall. I don't care where the raindrops fall. But I know that wherever it falls and it fall upon, soils that are needed, then those soils, will produce if there are seeds that have been planted, so to speak. You see? That's the duty of an angel. We make it rain. We don't watch over the rain. You see? And so when I demonstrate, it's all for clarity, to bring our people into a clear understanding. Because most of the thing that I'm demonstrating, even though you have people in opposition, most of them know it's the truth. They know what I'm saying is what it is. Then some people, they agents and agent provocateurs. They were sent to make it seem as if I was the enemy of the people, because they know that I'm the one that's really here in this era and time with my Moorish kin. And I don't say that as an individual. I'm talking about as in a collective. They know that I'm one of them soldiers of the great God that's really about uniting the people. But I know I can tell an agent when I see him. They can say what they want to say, jump up and down. I'm cut from that cloth for real, for real. I can tell if you even came through the struggle I came from just by looking at you. You see? I know some of y'all ain't came, you don't look familiar. You see? But we don't judge you based upon that either. Because everybody's path ain't meant to be the same path that I came through. But I came from the mud, literally, the dirt. So, again, we're going to keep bringing our people the truth. So we see our brother Elijah Poole Bey, when they were demonstrating in the Allah Temple of Islam, they also mark their fez. Now, it's not for me to attack them for demonstrating their way that I never attacked the brother for wearing his fez. I actually love the fact that the brother actually had his fez upon his head, but I understand as well why the brother removed the fez from his head. You know, I understand why he changed the name of his organization that he was part of. You know, the Moors was acting crazy back during that time. Everybody can agree upon that as special measure. But it's just good to know the brother was demonstrating with his fez. That's all I really would have to say about that. Now, as far as him marking it, you know, and me looking at the history, seeing his name upon the rolls and being a part and partial of the midst of being in the meeting, so to speak, of the Moors, you know, well, that's a whole nother measure. But it's not something I'm going to demonize, you know, based upon that special measure. You know, because I'm not demonizing the other individuals. I'm saying that Prophet Noble Drew Ali told the Moors don't mark their fez. There's a whole bunch of people that did a lot of stuff after the time of Noble Drew Ali. I'm not here to address and go in and judge that. I'm just setting the information out, you know, sorting it out and setting it out there to the family. Now, some people going to believe what they want to believe about the information. And they going to accept it or reject it based upon whatever the conditions that they demonstrating under. But a lot of the ones that talking don't know. Like I tell them all the time, I can teach you some things about that teaching. Like the prophet said, turn your brain in the water. You see? So I know a lot more about the NOI doctrine than you think I do. Trust me, thoroughly. No. But that's a whole nother measure. But yeah, we see the brother Melchizedek Supreme Shabazallah, he did his fez. He marked his fez. We're not concerned with what these brothers outside of our demonstration do. It's not for us to tell them what to do in their organization. We're a government. But we telling you, Prophet Noble Drew Ali said, don't mark your fez. You see, so for those who have now begun to mark their fezes after these particular ones, you know, you ain't doing nothing new. You know, also, yeah, we can see that, you know, ones is at least waking back up, you know, because it's a process. It's a process. We all are work, you know, in the making of perfection, right? So yeah, our brother here, he demonstrated his measure. We the Moors demonstrate the plain truth. You even got this fez that's on the manifest. You see that? Now all of these people, at least these right here, you know, that I'm speaking of right now, that on this fez, they say they honor the prophet. You know, the prophet said, don't mark your fez, but these people also consider themselves Masonic, so I guess they believe they got authority to demonstrate that. But in MAG, we the plain truth. That's how we demonstrate. We don't demonstrate right nothing on our fez. Here's another one. You see, you got more demonstrating this all over the place, marking fezes and so forth. And all of you, most of you already seen these particular pictures right here. We're going to give you the lesson on them again. So now dealing with the plain fezes, what is the color aspect? That's what we want to get into. We know black, according to science, means death. You know, now it's easy to take a black and white photo and say the prophet had a black fez on. But the reports that I read say he had a flaming red fez on. But that's another measure. I ain't here to argue about that. So you got the black fez. We don't wear it. Most of those who wear it say, well, This represent the death angels or the lawmen and so forth and so on. They say, well, brother Cook Bay put the feds on this brother head, and this brother did this and that there. And honors to our brother Cook Bay, but Cook Bay wasn't a prophet. You see, some people say, well, he got his feds from the prophet. I ain't here to argue that right now. I would say it's hearsay until I see a picture, a colored picture with the prophet with that fez on. But I do know in the writings it said that he had a red fez on. I don't see no writing saying the prophet, was walking around, with a black fez on. I only hear that coming back from other Moors saying, that this is where they got that from and that's where that came from. You see? But that's all good and well. We're not attacking them ones. That's what they do. That's what they do. But the black fez degree really represent, we already know what it is. We ain't got to go into it. We already said it. This is figure number 1 right here. It's what we demonstrate. You see? That's the plain truth right there, Moorish kin. That's the plain truth. Now, we don't have proof that the prophet demonstrated with the white fez on, but we know the white fez is symbolic to purity. It's just an expression. It ain't nowhere where he condemned it or he demonized it or whatever. He never told somebody, it's nowhere in the tradition where he say, take the white fez off of your head and so forth and so on. So it's no issue. Just the same thing in regards to dealing with, the black fez. The prophet never said don't wear a black fez, but we know what black represent according to the teachings. We know what white represent according to the teachings. So that's where you would deal with that special sign. And also, if you look at these 3 colors, white being the purity, and then you look at the red, that really happened to deal with, one reaching the rate of the atmosphere. And this is what a red or the survival of the best, survival of the fittest come in. One dying for the truth, one, in the past even had to go to war and shed blood for the truth, defending themselves. We don't have to demonstrate on them levels in this special era and time. We got to defend the truth, but we ain't got to get out here trying to bring harm to nothing, because we're peaceful people as Moors. Right? So really, if you were to look at these 3 different phases on a deeper level, you can see coming from darkness in the light, coming from that dead state of mind into fruition. Like I was trying to tell some of the Moors yesterday, about the difference between, being merely a Muslim, one that's submitting to the will, and a Muslim, one who has become the will. And they saying, well, that's the same thing, brother, this and that, there. On the surface level, the word Muslim and Muslim can be perceived as the same, but when you get into the Moorish paradigm and you speaking to somebody along the line of an adept degree of that measure, you find out, there's a difference between submitting to the will and conforming to the will. Submitting to the will, is submitting to the will sometime because you were forced to submit. Conforming is to do it by choice. But instead of, just submitting, conform also mean and become the law. Instead of submitting to peace, you become peace. So that's the degree that I'm talking about when I say it's a difference between merely being a Muslim and a Muslim. Now the shallow, they think something wrong with that. They don't know no better. But that's all good and well. It ain't meant for everybody to unfold at one time. So really these phases, putting them together, really represent alchemy. Coming from a dead state into a living God. God-man. Islamism. So that's the drawing, family, when it comes to dealing with the feds, from a basic point of view. But if you were to get into the deeper aspects of it, and we hear brothers often talk about what the inside represent the womb and so forth and so on, and that's good science, you know. But do you think it's the womb of a woman, or do you think it's the womb of darkness in regards to dealing with your mind? Right? Light that has to be found there. The tassel is said to have 360 strands, so to speak, as they say, right? Is your tassel 24 inches or is your tassel 12 inches? Why is your tassel 12? And number 12 represent government, right? The top part of the fez represent 360 degrees of spiritual knowledge. The lower aspect represent 360 degrees of basically, we'll say uniting divinity in the matter, above and so below. I put it that way. That's 720. 1080 when you add the tassel in there. And then the tassel also represent the cord of love or divinity, right? When you can come out of that state right there of thinking that black, is an abode for you, that would be something good. You can see some gold and some light coming at that demonstration. A lot of people say, well, this represents the nipple of the mother. Well, what about the four, punctured circles on the top? You see, that go back to the quadrants and everything. But it ain't what you put on your head, Moors. It's what you put in your head that matters. You can have a fez on, it don't matter what color, what you write on it, and your head be dry as a raisin. So what difference does it make? If you got a fez on, you still act like a Negro, black, and a colored man. Hating your brothers for giving you the truth for no reason. And that's the thing too. First thing, when somebody come to you with some hardcore truth, you want to say they hate you. They demonstrating hatred. No, one demonstrating truth and you hate the truth. That's the real measure. Tell the people the truth. Stop trying to use the prophet and his teachings as a fig leaf to cover the way you feel about somebody. So that's just a brief measure, Moorish kin, a brief 2 hours. But it'll do somebody some good. So that being said, I just say gratitude, peace, love, and law. And I do have this measure here to bring forth too, because they actually have. I want you to see also the definition that the Shriners give to the significance of the fez here. Just so you make no mistake about it. For those of you who still believe that the fez came from the Shriners, even after this is what they said. The significance of the fez. The nobles wear rich costumes, right, of Eastern character, made of silk and brocaded velvet of oriental intensity of color. The ordinary costume for street parade is conventional black with the regulation fez. When pilgrimages to Mecca were interrupted by the Crusades about AD 980, the Mohammedans west of the Nile journeyed to Fez, or Fars, in Morocco, as to a holy city. Among the flourishing manufactures of the city was a head covering called tarbouche, now known as fez, which was dyed scarlet for the students in a great school in that city. In that way, it became a mark of learning and gradually displaced other forms and colors of hats. It was carried in all directions by caravans, and thus became the distinguishing headdress of Muslims in every part of the empire. So they letting you know, that the origin of this feds, they letting you know where it come from. And they never claim it as theirs. So for those of you who still have questions as to who had it first, well, we should have removed all doubt by the time this video is over with. You know, so until the next time, study long, study strong, study well. L's and bays, peace and love, gratitude, Islamism. We love you.